Pivotal events throughout history have prompted rapid change in the way we do things. Discoveries, inventions, technology, wars, natural disasters, and yes, pandemics. Just a few of the events that suddenly alter the world. Adapting to change is essential, and 2020 will be remembered as a year of monumental impact. Join us for a free 3-part webinar series on the impacts of COVID-19 due to disruptions or change. Experts will present tips on evolving marketing, building business continuity, increasing operational flexibility, managing essential workforce, and enhancing customer service. In this episode, part 1 of 3, we'll talk about how shocks and disruptions from the pandemic impacted the green industry. What changes should you be thinking about to market and sustain your business? Learn about university research and outreach resources that will help you enhance and plan for your business in the upcoming year.
All right, welcome everybody. We're going to be hearing from Dr. Ben Campbell first. Dr. Campbell is an associate professor and extension specialist in the Department of Agriculture and Applied Economics at the University of Georgia. His extension and research focuses on increasing profitability of nursery, greenhouse, and turf firms within the state of Georgia. So welcome, Dr. Campbell.
So thank you for having me. So I am an associate professor in the Department of Ag and Applied Economics at the University of Georgia. A little about sort of back in July, we were getting ready to do a survey, and we were like, well, wonder what the impact of COVID is on consumers, what they're buying, and how they're buying. So most of the stuff you're going to see today is coming from that survey that we did to get understanding what's going on. So again, working with myself, Alicia Wren out of Tennessee, and then Julie Campbell, University of Georgia, Department of Horticulture. We've worked quite a bit on this. We've published some stuff, peer-reviewed journal articles, and then also extension articles. So if you're interested in more of the details of what we'll talk about, they'll be available to you. Let's see if I can get this to work now. There we go. Okay. So the problem with understanding about COVID and how COVID is impacting businesses in Georgia or throughout the U.S., there's little information. You've got a lot of things there, ag census, central horticultural specialties. A lot of these things are yearly, if even yearly. Ag census every, number of years. So there's very little there's very little information out there to understand what's happening in the marketplace. So again, surveys or industry surveys or producer surveys and consumer surveys are about the only way to get up-to-date information. So that's what we did. We did a survey to understand what's going on. The big thing, 2020 was somewhat of a good year for the grain industry. A lot of the people that I work with deal with other commodities, and it was interesting. They were all saying, "Oh, horrible year for agriculture, horrible year for agriculture." For the grain industry, though, it was fairly good year because people were at home and they were purchasing products because they needed something to do. So plants and other cells, we saw an uptick there. The big issue, the question we're going to have going into 2021 and beyond is that going to be sustainable? Are we going to see those same things happen in 2020? Or are they going to go forward? And hopefully some of this I'll show you and talk about here in the next little bit will give some idea of what we think is going to happen. One of the key questions is with respect to what happened in 2020 and COVID was, what did people do differently? So in the survey that we did of the Southeast back in July, we asked people, since you were home for the crop because of the pandemic, did you do something different? Or what did you do? You spent more time doing. 44% said they planned to garden. 13% put in turf grass, and you can see around down the line of what they did. So we see a large number of people that actually went out and did stuff that they may not have typically done compared to 2019 or pre-pandemic. So we had this influx of consumers coming in, some that were new, and there's a lot that did more than what they've done in the past. So, again, we did see this movement of COVID that actually was beneficial to the industry because with respect to selling out stock or selling plants, because you had this group of people that were stuck at home or they were quarantined. Big question is, well, what did that make difference-wise with respect to, firms' sales? This is a sort of the survey we did. It gives you an idea by state. So for Georgia, we saw roughly a 1.92% increase in the amount of plants purchased from January to July. So we saw an uptick in the amount purchased. One of the big things that hampered our the purchasing was that a lot of places ran out of stock, and you can't sell what you don't have, so that limited a lot. So, but again, we saw that roughly probably $12 million extra benefit in the state on sale wise because of the pandemic, people buying more. So $4 doesn't sound like a lot, but when you think about $4 per household, it adds up quickly. Seen other estimates around 25 40% gains from producers garden centers. So again, probably 2% is low, 40 is probably high. We're probably somewhere in the middle with respect to plant sales and the uptick of sales coming from due to the pandemic. Again, if we look across the southeastern U.S., we extrapolate quite a bit of money was spent extra by the U.S. and the South and the U.S. on the amount spent. With respect to other items, fertilizers, mulches, differences in what we see per state. We saw Georgia, consumers indicated they spent a little bit less comparatively. Again, do I think we spent 9% less? Probably not, but I think it gives an indication that we didn't see a huge gain in this area. We saw probably that the real gain was in plant sales, not coming from other things, pots, fertilizers, mulches. It was coming from plants. But again, as you can see, we see differences here, and we see an overall net benefit for the industry, given that we had a pandemic. And I know saying that a benefit because we had a pandemic is probably not the way I always say it, but I think the industry greatly benefited on that people were quarantined at home and they were buying plants and other products. Overall impact of COVID-19. Overall, we saw a big benefit throughout the U.S. Fewer cut flowers, probably not so much because it was really bad for cut flowers. But we do see that, so like Georgia, we see somewhat of a loss, $44 million loss, a lot of that coming from the loss in sales that we attributed to the not buying the mulches and fertilizers. But if you're selling plants, generally you probably saw an uptick in plant sales. So again, it's just an overview of idea of what's happening with respect what we think is happening. And again, this was through July. This is January through July, 2019 to 2020 comparison. We're doing a survey currently. This survey is throughout the U.S. And I think this probably maybe a little bit better gauge of what happened. This is looking at 2019 to 2020. People generally can think of yearly numbers better than they can looking at, subset of years. So January, July, this is looking at 2019 versus 2020. How much did you spend in 2020 compared to 2019 on plants? On average, 18% more is what they said. The median being 3%. So again, we're probably in that, probably 10% range is probably where we're at increase in sales. Spend in 2020 compared to 2019 in non-plants, those fertilizer mulch. Again, we see something very similar. So by and large, I think we had an uptick. I think we're roughly probably in the 10% range is probably where we're at with respect to increased sales across the board, which is good. The only problem is for people trying to make decisions for next year, do we think we're going to have that increase, whether it be 2%, 10%, or 20%? Do we think we're going to have that in 2021? And I'm not sure that we're going to have that unless we have people quarantined again and they can't go out. So again, I really think we're going to see a regression back to where we were in 2019, not all the way back, but I think we're going to move back that way, and we're going to see less sales going into this coming year and in future years. This is satisfaction with the green industry response. So we asked consumers in the survey, how satisfied were you with the measures taken by the following locations to lessen the potential transmission of coronavirus? Again, one of the good things, what we thought we would see was some of the bigger stores like mass merchandisers and box stores doing a really good job because they probably have more resources to do things. And we might see a suffering of independent garden centers. We didn't see that. What we see is that roughly the same scores. If anything, they're roughly equal. So our independent garden centers and nurseries did a really good job and on the same level as Walmart, Home Depot, and others with making consumers feel like those businesses were doing the right thing and trying to prevent transmission. The bottom table gives you an idea of, roughly a good 1% saying that these different entities, so 1% have said independent garden centers were doing an extremely poor job, 13% extremely good. Most people are rather sort of in that middle range of neutral to doing somewhat good job, which is good to know that that comparison with respect to bigger chain stores, bigger retail outlets, that we see our industry, the sort of the smaller independent garden centers comparatively to the mass merchandise box stores, receiving the same scores. So we didn't see a drop off. We saw that transmission that they were consumers were satisfied with what these businesses were doing. So if you're doing it, keep doing it, and consumers actually see it, and they see that you're taking the time and effort to try to ensure their safety. Shopping habits. Again, we saw a difference in shopping habits. This is how much is bought there in curbside and online. We did see an uptick in online for throughout a lot of states, but I think a lot of this is driven by what happened in the states. Georgia, you see probably a very little decrease, and a lot of that's probably due to the fact that we were very open very quick. Georgia shut down fairly quickly, but then opened back up, and so we probably see that some of these shopping behaviors didn't change that much. Given because of that. We see other states, you see a big change in how consumers were shopping, whether it be in-store, moving to curbside, or in-store moving to online. You see a lot more change. So we do see some change, but by and large, like in Georgia, we didn't see a lot of changes happening, and most likely it's because we opened up fairly quickly. To me, this is fairly interesting, and this is one of the big things with respect to what businesses are going to do in the future, and how you should sort of position yourself. This is purchasing habits. How do you going to buy? What we see is that a lot said that they're going to go back to when the pandemic is over. They're going to move back to they're going to shop the way they did pre-pandemic. So you're at 40, 50 to 60% saying, you know what, when this is over, I'm going to go back the way I did in the past. 20% are going to do some kind of similar to what they're doing in the pandemic, and then roughly 20, 30% say they're going to move back to a combination. So I think what you're going to see moving forward as we move out of COVID and post-COVID is you're going to see consumers actually sort of gravitate back to pre-pandemic levels. Not all consumers, but you're going to see that movement. And again, we see it throughout history. When you have an event happen, after 9/11, no one was going to fly. I mean, several years later, flights was booming going into the recession. So again, I think you're going to see, if you're planning on making changes with respect to how you're going to market, I really think that moving back to the pre-pandemic levels is what we're going to see. This is expenditures. Again, I broke this out into plants, those who bought less plants, those who bought more. And either way, you still see the same thing. You see in Georgia, 76% who said they bought less plants, they're gonna buy more once the pandemic's over. Those who bought more, you see half are gonna go back to their pre-pandemic levels. So we see this movement back to this sort of equilibrium point once the pandemic ends. So if you're thinking about how do we sort of position ourselves for the future, going into COVID, coming out of COVID, I think we're going to see some movement back to that general equilibrium point. And so consumers who bought more or less are going to gravitate back to their pre-pandemic levels. That doesn't mean there's not opportunities for finding new consumers here, because you do have that group, 20 or 30%, that say, hey, look, I'm going to do things differently. So I'm going to buy more, or I'm going to buy more product, or I'm going to shop in different ways. Those consumers are out there, and it's a matter of finding them and understanding who they are. And so a lot of stuff we're doing now is trying to identify who exactly these consumers are that are saying they're going to buy more plants, or they're going to buy similarly to after the pandemic, we move out of it. So again, understanding who those consumers are, understanding that we're going to see a lot of consumers move back to that equilibrium. Sort of one of the last things I think is very important is what's going to happen in the future, right? So planting a garden in 2021. 35%. So this is our new survey we're doing. So this is our 2,500 people that are surveyed throughout the U.S. 35% said they're not planting a garden. 42% said, yeah, I'm planting a garden because I always plant one. But you have this other group here, this 20% or so that are planting a garden because they're worried about a food shortage. That's not COVID related. More than likely, that's not COVID related. That is related to other things happening in politics and other things out there, that we see a group that's, that are probably going to be buying plants that may not have in the past, because they didn't buy in the past because they're worried about running out of food. 8% says they're going to buy plant a garden if they work from home. So again, if we move back to opening up the country, or continue to open up Georgia, you may see this 8% go away, which will decrease plant sales on that side of things. If we move back to more of a sort of shutdown or quarantine society, that 8 to 10% is going to come back in the market and be looking for plants. So, from planning purposes and understanding what's going on for a small business, I think you really have to understand that what happened in the pandemic will hold as long as there's a pandemic. If we move outside that quarantine structure and we move back to a different way of doing things, sort of more that status quo that was before the pandemic, I think people are going to move back to that. So how do you adjust your business practices in a way to understand what's going to happen? How do you um, you may adapt to a world that's changing towards a sort of a more sheltered, more quarantined society, realizing when we pop out of the backside of this, that we may move to a more of a open, move back towards that equilibrium point that we were, with that equilibrium we were before the pandemic hit. So again, from a business perspective, I think those are some big things we need to think about and weigh that, and a lot of that's figuring out where we are COVID wise and where do we need to be, where do you need to be, and where do you think we're going to be going in 21, 22, 2021, 2022 with your business. I think that's the big takeaways here. Again, that's a lot of information very quickly, but I think those are the big things are, where things that changed going because of COVID, we're probably going to see a reversion or regression back after COVID. The question is just how long is COVID going to last? I don't think any of us know that. So I think that's it. If you're looking for resources, there's resources out there that we can provide you. There's a couple extension publications we've got out. There's other publications with respect to more peer-reviewed publications go into greater detail. But there's a lot of information out there already. We've got this new survey that we'll be releasing information on shopping habits and comparing Georgia to the Southeast to the U.S. As we get finished that survey up here, we're going to survey about 4,000. We're about 2/3 of the way through as of right now. So again, the information is out there if you're looking for more information. This is just an overview of that things are changing, and they're probably going to continue to change. And if you're a business, you've really got to be adaptive and understand what's going on to make decisions on what to plant, how to plant, and how to market your product given as we move forward. So I hope that's what you wanted. I think that's it, Greg.
Yeah, wow, outstanding information, Ben. Great job, and I look forward to reading more in depth on some of these articles. So thank you for that.
All right. Yeah, Ben, I really enjoyed that. I particularly like that garden survey. I had not seen those numbers or anything like that, and that's super interesting. We are going to hold questions till the end of our 3 speakers so that everybody gets their allotted amount of time. But again, if anybody has any questions as the talks are going on, I'll be keeping track of those. So feel free to just throw those in the chat and we'll try to get to those at the end. Up next, we have Steve Newton joining us, and Steve is a business consultant with UGA SBDC, so Small Business Development Center, since 2016. In this capacity, Mr. Newton brings his personal business experience and resources of the Small Business Development Center to help small business owners grow their businesses by solving problems in marketing, management, and finance. So welcome, Steve.
Well, thank you. Hopefully my mute and my screen will start working here very soon. And hopefully you can see my slides. Give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. Greg, can you see my slides? Anybody? Oh, you can? Okay, good. Wasn't sure. Well, I appreciate it. It's interesting, Dr. Campbell. You and I had not coordinated our comments at all on this topic, but I generally have drawn on 2 big slides on that same concept that reinforces what you're saying generally in the economy about how resilient consumers are to return to former patterns, consumption patterns after any kind of shock to the economy. So I've got a couple of slides on that, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about some things you can do as a business owner currently to prepare yourself for that transition. If you're old enough, old as I am, you've been through a number of shocks to the economy in several different ways. And we're definitely in that process right now of understanding the full impact of our, and I'm trying to get my screen to come back up here, if I can get that to do. I'm trying to get over to my slideshow here so it'll move forward. Apologize for this. Just give me just 1 second. All righty, come on back here. I am not getting that to move forward, so there we go. Um, so Ben was talking about the changes specifically in the landscape industry. If you look at the gross domestic product trend lines over 100-year period and think about all the shocks that we've had to the economy, going back to the Spanish flu, World War I, World War II, the Great Depression, other financial crisis, this economy that we were in always has recovered, hopefully always will. And whatever those trend lines are in a specific industry are usually subject to external factors affecting that industry. So we have to be prepared for those shocks, but we also have to be resilient in the fact that we can endure those shocks. And resiliency doesn't mean just the ability to bear through something for a given period of time. It means the ability to respond in a favorable way to it. I mean, you remember the crisis and the financial crisis from 2008 and 2009. I mean, the nursery greenhouse landscape industry was devastated for a long period of time, but we did come back from that. So we need to prepare ourselves as an industry again. Most of the industries that I talk to right now are not as in really the good shape that the landscape industry is in. I mean, I'm talking to food and accommodation folks, everybody in the hospitality, live venues. Those folks are devastated, and we could face at any time for any reason a similar type situation in our industry for a lot of different reasons. Fortunately, through this crisis, we gained a little bit. Landscape industry we benefited because we had those long-term, people were staying at home. They wanted to feather their nest, if you will. But the concept of what I'm trying to convey here, say to you, is that there will always be a shock to the economy from some external force that we will never be able to predict. And there are a lot of things you can do currently to make sure that your business, your specific business, is prepared for those changes. Sometimes they're good. Sometimes it happened to us. We've benefited to some degree from this, but that's also going to change as well. This is another one of my favorite graphs, and then I'll get to the very specifics of what we're doing currently in COVID-19 and some of the things we can benefit from PPP and other things. But this again springboards off of Ben's presentation there about how consumers spend their money, and this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and there's all kind of great charts. Unfortunately, I'm an economist too, so this is how we communicate with folks, is through charts. But in this particular chart, it shows the average spending on housing is about $12,000 a year, and after we take into account the COVID crisis, if we did a survey, as Dr. Campbell did, for consumers, for the average consumer, you'd see that category increase quite a bit. And obviously the things like eating out and vehicles perhaps, and of course travel, those sort of things are going to shrink dramatically. Those industries have really suffered. But when COVID is over, they're going to come back. And so the available consumer consumption, consumer spending is going to decrease back in, as Dr. Campbell said, to an equilibrium on consumption when we're talking about landscape industry. So again, the trend lines indicate we will go back to some sort of normalcy prior to what we saw prior to COVID-19, and maybe a tight labor supply, maybe not as many customers. So there's a lot of things in resilience you need to think about now and prepare for that. And I have this conversation with clients all the time here at the SBC about securing credit during good times. Maybe you've never thought about securing credit right now, some sort of line of credit, but now's a great time to talk to your banker if you've got cash in the bank, money in the bank, because lenders are always willing to talk to you if you don't need their money, right? When you do need their money and time's tight, that's a tough time to get a loan. But right now is a great time to talk to your banker and obtain a credit line now. If you don't have one, think about putting one in place, getting a good relationship with your, 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 to make sure that whatever transitions in the industry occur, that you're prepared financially to cover some of those short-term months, some of that working capital that you need to cover some shortages. Make sure your books are in good order. I mean, this is the perfect time to make sure that if you can't generate a profit and loss statement on a monthly basis and know what your job costs are on an individual basis, now's a perfect time when you have the resources to think about those things. Some of the other things you really want to think about in times of plenty, when we don't have the stress of trying to keep the doors open on a day-to-day basis, might include a continuity plan in case the one or more key employees were not able to work anymore for whatever reason. Something to think about on a regular basis. Enhancing customer loyalty, reinforcing that relationship with your customers in a way that's going to make your business indispensable for them. As people maybe turn away from the landscaping business a little bit or return to normal spending patterns, you want to make sure you're the one chosen, that you have become indispensable to the operation of that commercial or residential business or residential consumer. So put in place, I guess before COVID, our number one issue for small business owners, for every person coming in this office, was I don't have enough labor to keep me going. I don't have enough, I just can't find enough folks. And that labor shortage could return after COVID is lifted. And now's a great time to think about incentives in place to be competitive for those employees. One of the, this is a policy question. I'm not a policy person. We implement it. We respond to the policy. We don't write the policy. Some of the things that are being considered, though, are things like a $15 minimum wage. And think about what that would do if you have W-2s that you have to pay $15 an hour to. How do you respond? And those are things that are percolating through the system as a possibility. Now's the time to think about how to plan for that. Things that you can do to attract your employees and keep them in place, or healthcare, maybe profit sharing, and some other paid time off, things that we don't necessarily always do in the landscaping business. Increase your HR capacity to handle those things, and invest in. Now's a great time to invest in the future of your business through new marketing strategies, or perhaps even some new technology. Be prepared to work with those internal and external threats that you don't, that you can be prepared to respond to now, and when you're not in a crisis mode. So those are just some headlines and headliners from just some resources that we have available here at SBDC to help you think through some of those challenges you have as a small business owner. Doesn't matter what business you're in. Those are challenges that every small business owner faces. And if you're, there's an SBDC office near you somewhere in the state of Georgia. We have 18 offices around the state. So working with your landscape professionals and folks like Greg and County Extension Service, Cooperative Extension Service, we can help you work through a lot of those problems. So anyway, and very briefly, I'm just going to highlight a few of the things from the Economic Aid Act that just was signed into law on December 27th. And, here's the thing about this new law. It's a little bit more difficult to get money out of this law than it was the first one. PPP-1, all you had to do was declare that you were in a period of economic uncertainty and you were eligible. PPP is a lot different. You have to show PPP-2 is a lot different. You have to show a 25% decrease in income from one quarter to the next, from 2019 to 2020. So you have to have those bookkeeping records in place, have to generate that data. Here's the good news, though. If you did not participate in PPP-1, you still can. It's open again. So if you haven't applied for PPP-1, the same rules apply for PPP-1 as they did when originally. So you can go back in and think about applying for that. And then there's also a targeted EIDL advance, which is being revisited. This really might apply to a lot of our folks. It wouldn't apply to other small businesses because a lot of our landscape companies are located in areas of historically underserved business districts or business zones. You have to be in a hub zone now in order to qualify for the targeted EIDL advances in the second phase. So look at that again, it's sba.gov. You go there, apply for the EIDL loan. If you did not get it, you can even get some top-off funds if they're on there if you did not get the full 10,000 the first time around. I'm going through this real fast. I'm going through it at the 20,000 foot level. If you have specific questions about how these programs might apply to your business and how they might help you, or maybe you've got a customer, a commercial customer that's going through a similar situation and they want to, you can share with them this information too if it doesn't specifically apply to you. The point is, in order to get it, figure out how this specifically applies to your business, definitely contact your local SBDC office and we'll be happy to help you work through this worksheet and other things. Another great thing right now about SBA guaranteed loan debt relief is that if you have an SBA loan, as you know, first round, you got 6 months paid for you. That was forgiven, 6 months paid for you. They've introduced that program again for new loans and for existing loans. If it's an existing loan, you're going to get another 3 months. If it's a new loan, you're going to get the initial 6 months. If you're certain industries like hospitality and food and accommodations, and there's a whole litany of them, about 8 or 10 under the NAICS codes, you're going to get another 3 months paid for you. So, or actually a 4 months paid for you. So there's a lot of incentives out there to think about. Is now the time to think about securing an SBA loan? What's the true cost to you and that sort of thing. So Greg, how am I doing on time? I need to make sure I cover this real quick. I'm not going to go through too many more of these slides. But then, like I say, there are some targeted programs for hard hit businesses and disadvantaged businesses. The rollout on these programs are targeting community development financial institutions and historically underserved areas. So, there's a lot of ways to access those funds through those programs, and there's a lot of help available to you. The other big thing too, and this will be about the last thing I need to really point out on this new program, again, I'm flying very fast at a 20,000 foot level. Any of these things that specifically apply to your business, contact us for more specific information. Our services are at no cost to you, just like the county extension service. So the other thing is the PPP 1. We were concerned that it would be a taxable event if that money was forgiven. It is not a taxable event. That was covered in the Economic Aid Act. Also, the expenses that you covered with that PPP money are also allowed deductions for your tax return in 2020. Big steps for small business owners, helps quite a bit. So anyway, lots of more information there. I just wanted to take a few minutes to introduce this. Takeaway, I know these slides are compelling, right? But the big takeaway is, there's a lot of more information about this program, how it may help you, and the way to get that information is to make sure you contact your local SBC or county extension service to help you start that process. Greg, I think that's all I got.
Right on time, Steve. Thank you. Great information too. Thanks for sharing that. Laura, I'm going to turn that over to you to introduce Cheryl.
All right. Thank you, Steve. And like Greg said, so Dr. Boyer is going to round us out for this session. Dr. Cheryl Boyer is an associate professor and extension specialist for nursery crop production and marketing at Kansas State University. She holds a Bachelor of Landscape Architecture and a Master's in Horticulture, specifically nursery crop production, from Oklahoma State University. Her doctoral degree in horticulture was earned from Auburn University in 2008, where she studied alternative wood-based substrates. Cheryl's work focuses on the production, culture, and use of ornamental nursery crops, and also on current evidence-based new media marketing tools, such as digital tools like social media, websites, and e-newsletters, and strategies for horticulture businesses. Dr. Boyer is also a co-creator of the Center for Rural Enterprise Engagement. So that's quite a mouthful. Thank you, Dr. Boyer, for joining us, and we'll turn it over to you now.
Oh, goodness. That was quite a lot. I apologize for that.
It's a good
Do you see full screen just so we're looking good?
It looks great to me, yeah.
Okay, Great. Well, thank you for having me. Much like Ben and Steve, this is kind of a general overview type presentation, and we'll go through a lot in a short amount of time. But the purpose is sort of to help you think about how to situate yourself and what sorts of changes you might be thinking about in 2021. So I'm going to cover some work that we've done at Case, well, with my team, which I'll introduce in just a minute, that covers sort of a broad range of topics, from the Amazon plant store to what millennial consumers are thinking, and how they're acting, a little bit about Facebook marketing, even though we've done quite a bit with that, and some about agricultural storytelling. So to kick it off, this is the group of people that we put together this center. So we created a center in 2015 called the Center for Rural Enterprise Engagement. And our purpose really was to develop, to conduct research that would help our agricultural stakeholders start or sustain businesses so that they could stay in their rural communities. We've had lots of folks benefit from this, not just agriculture, but those other people that are involved in sustaining rural life. But everything that we study is horticulture. So we are really focusing on nurseries and garden centers and trying to equip them to be more successful in this new marketplace, because as you all know, and you're experiencing with this big Zoom meeting, we're doing tons and tons of this year in extension and in all of our online experiences. That's not what you signed up for. Most of you signed up because you like working with plants and you've discovered that the world keeps changing and we have to adapt. So we're trying to help you cut through the clutter so you can be more successful and efficient and effective with your marketing practices. So this is our team. These are my colleagues. I am horticulture and I'm at Kansas State University. We originally were all at Kansas State University, and now we're kind of spread across the country, which is kind of a fun aspect to what we do, but we've been working remotely for years. So this is our team. Dr. Hikaru Peterson, her specialty is applied economics, and she's at the University of Minnesota. And Dr. Laurie Baker is an agricultural communications specialist, and she's at the University of Florida. So we've got the topic, horticulture, we've got the money piece, and we have the words piece. So that's kind of how our team works together. And we've been pretty effective with some of the research that we've done. It's all sort of focused on whether or not these efforts in marketing are done well and if they make a difference to the bottom line. So these are some of the articles that we have published in recent years. But one that I want to highlight is one where we were really looking at online retail plant sales. And this came out just a couple of years ago. I think it was October 2018. And we looked at businesses and how they were conducting online sales, or whether they were, and by and large, almost everybody was not. So this change that we have made as a COVID response to curbside pickup and online sales, it happened super fast. We were headed there, but it was going to take a long time. And as an example, some of the companies, I think we had at least one business that their website said, well, print off this form, fill it out, and then fax it or email it to us. And if you haven't heard from anyone in 7 or 8 days, do it again. And at that point, you have completely lost anybody who's thinking about buying online, but that's the way we were set up. So as a component of this, we really pulled in to sort of see what people were doing on Amazon in particular, because at the time, Amazon had just launched their plant store. And we wanted to see if anybody was even trying it and what they were thinking, because consumers more and more were looking to that as an online platform for buying plants. So we do know there's lots of other platforms, there's lots of other ways to do it, but Amazon is sort of a nationally recognized feature. So some of the things that we learned, the big takeaways from the Amazon plant store research, is to focus on a few number of items and take those to the next level. So you don't want to put your entire sales platform, everything you could possibly grow, on there. You want to pick a handful that you think you can manage well, you can ship well, you can do all the pieces to it, and make the consumer happy, because they're happy to return things to Amazon pretty easily. And you really don't want to get a dead plant back in the mailer that you put in the mail. So the other piece is they wanted a lot of instructional information. So we have a tendency to just say, here's the plant, this is what it is, but they wanted you to show them how to use it. They wanted multiple images. They wanted to see it from multiple angles. The entries that were better had the product from multiple angles and in multiple situations. So if it's an indoor plant, you might have it indoors in different locations in the home and then also on the porch. So showing the plant or the product that you're selling in use and then in comparison to other products. So they like lots of long descriptions with as many product details and instructions as you can provide. And then you want to make sure that you're asking your customers to review you and get stars, and that you're responding to negative feedback as quickly as possible in a positive way. So, one last note is that particularly on Amazon, because of the way their algorithm works, and algorithms are constantly changing, it may be worth paying for sponsoring initially. Now, there's lots of other fees and issues associated with whether or not you choose to go the Amazon plant store route. And that's enough for another day, but it's something to think about. And I think this information is good for any online sales platform for plants. More information is always better as people consider whether that's something they want to invest in. One of the things that we did as a response to the pandemic was to develop a suite of resources called touchless transactions. So this is just a screenshot of our website, which is ruralengagement.org. And then you can click there to get to our touchless transactions. We've got a written blog post with lots of resources. We've got a recorded webinar, some podcasts. So if you want to work through that, our webinar covers the overall, like what you're trying to do with e-commerce. And then I go into quite a bit of detail about all the different platforms and payment tools that you might want to think through as you're developing an online store for curbside pickup. Though many of you may have already solved that problem, we've sort of tried to curate resources for you to make it simple so you don't have to sort through everything online. So ruralengagement.org/touchless transactions. Now, switching gears a little bit to talk about millennial consumers. This was a project that we did with college students. So take it for what it is, college students in Kansas of that age group, and sort of what their impressions were with online media. And so this was actually a study looking at 360-degree video to see how much they liked it and what their perceptions were. And, the overall summary of this for millennial consumers is they like the high tech. They want the high tech, but they also want high touch. They're afraid of failure and they want you to help them through it. So I think the most interesting thing that came out of this is that they really want to come to our brick and mortar stores. They're not just looking for an online sales experience. They're looking for both. They want an awesome preview of what you're going to sell them, and then they want a good experience in the store. So hook them with your high tech and win them with reel them in with your customer service. So in this particular study, we were looking at 360-degree video, but we also asked about how they made decisions related to online marketing and what their preferences were for purchasing live plants online. So that's the only question I'm going to cover in detail, well, semi-detail today. But we were really trying to understand what we could do to attract that particular group. So this was the research question 3, which was their online plant preferences, purchasing preferences. Overall, I mean, they're college students. They wanted something small that would fit in their apartment with lots of bright colors that didn't take a lot of care. And they were actually really hesitant to purchase live plants online. Now, this could have changed since the pandemic, and we're all in general doing a whole lot better at presenting our content online. But if you haven't, these are some guidelines. They actually had a high negative response to ordering plants online, and they were really worried that the plant would die. So there's no sure way to advertise a plant wouldn't die. So we have an education opportunity there. But then this other person said, I feel like you have to be there in person because we're just looking at a video. If you want to interact with someone, you need to be there in person. So there were more comments like this, that they were more comfortable going in online. So I think that's great for the future of our industry, that we are adapting to this high tech because of the pandemic. So as painful as it is moving us forward in a way that we would not have been able to do otherwise. So I think it's a win overall. And then they want to buy our products, and they're going to, go along the spectrum of plant purchasing habits, just like other generations have. So they will come along and want to buy our products. So if we can get them when they're young and give them confidence, they may be more likely to purchase things later. So a little bit about Facebook marketing. We had a grant to look at images in Facebook and messages. So we did a big study looking at the images and the messages, and then a little bit about agricultural storytelling for farm products. So in this case, we actually had quite a bit different. So we had three main products. We had a vegetable product, pepper. We had an ornamental product with petunia, and then we had a fruit product with apples. So we looked at the product itself with maybe an educational message. We looked at photos of the product with people, and that may or may not be my small child who's in the other room. And kindergarten was hard this morning, just saying. And then so people in the photos, and then a promotional photos that may be more about, the message may be more about sales. So we looked at this and we asked them to click on the parts of the picture that were interesting. So we have this really cool heat map data showing what they were attracted to in the photo. And you can see on this people picture, they were looking at the children's faces, but they also were clicking on the message. They were reading it to see if there was a sale, and they were looking at the product very closely as well. And you can see in this one, this looks a lot like Bridget Behe's research, where people are, the eye tracking research, where they are looking at the center of the plant. So it's all very interesting data. Those papers will be coming out soon. But the overall takeaway for Facebook marketing is to have a plan. What is your intention? What are your goals? And what are your boundaries that you're going to set in place to make social media not take over your entire life? So there's a balance there to be effective, and just, slice in and get that in and handle that like it's another task on your list without getting sucked down the rabbit hole of Facebook. So it's still something that we need to be on, a platform we need to address, but it doesn't have to take over our lives, and you can be smart about that. Understanding your audience, measuring the effectiveness of what you're doing. So I think so much, one of the main reasons we started this was because I felt like our industry was just throwing things out there. They had no idea what they were doing. They had a very detailed plan for traditional marketing. So radio, TV, billboards, newspaper, you guys have got it down, but you didn't really interconnect the social media and how that can be more, help you be more effective. So that's kind of what we have tried to dig into, is how to help you be more efficient and effective with that work as part of your business. And part of that is getting a baseline, like where are you now and where are you going in the future, and have the things that you tried made a difference? So having someone be responsible for this, whether that's you or someone else, is really important if you're going to make progress on Facebook marketing. And then the last note is to make brand ambassadors of your customers. They will take your message far and wide if you encourage them to do so. And one little plug, we have an online conference coming up. This is our annual Insight Summit. So we kind of tend to focus on analytics, but it's also covers basics of new media marketing, which covers all of those digital tools. It'll be in February. And we've taught this several times, so we're excited to share it in a 100% virtual format this year. We did hybrid last year and that went really well. So it's exciting to do all virtual, and we have lots of experience with that. So just one little bit about the agricultural storytelling. We've been investigating this to figure out what sorts of farm stories will resonate, and are customers willing to pay more based off of the story that you tell about your business. So are you talking about a family farm story, professional business? Are you environmentally conscious, or are you really engaged in the community? And then how far they have to travel to get your product. So in this case, we were looking at a consumer supported agriculture box. So we had identical photos of a potential box, and we tested the price, how far they would have to travel to purchase it on site, or whether it was delivered for a price, and then the story that the business is telling about their company and how they're moving forward, or how they're selling. So that is, those sorts of things are things that you need to think about. How you position yourself and your business matters. People are looking at that. And as you look at all of this and it feels overwhelming, think about who you can partner with to help with the writing and the photos. There may be people in your community who would enjoy doing that on a very part-time basis, or in exchange for free plants or something else that they can help you with. But people in the community want to help, and that sometimes is a little piece that they can do that is may not be your forte, the communication part. And just remember that more than ever, people want experiences. So when we can provide these outdoor experiences, that's great to facilitate those. That's what they're looking for. But if they can't come in because of COVID, then you can describe the sights and the sounds and the smells of what's happening inside your garden center, especially as we approach a new season and people are ready to think about gardening again. And they may be very particular about when they choose to come, and they may want to know, whether or not it's busy and whether or not it's safe. But like Ben was saying, we may see a bit more of a return to typical behavior as well. But in general, the experience piece is what folks are looking for. So with that, I am happy to take any questions along with everyone else. And there's my email address and the email addresses of our teams. And we'll be happy to help you with any of those things as they come up.
Cheryl, thanks. That was fantastic. All of our speakers have put so much information in their little times that they've been allotted. We do have a handful of questions for our panelists. I'll start backwards. So Cheryl, one question for you was, which storytelling style in that research did you guys find to be most effective? Environment, family, community, what did people connect with the most?
I actually don't think I have seen the final results of that paper. We kind of had a lot happening at the same time, and I think Hikaru and Laurie are wrapping that piece up. I need to double check with them. I think it just matters how you place yourself. So my assumption is that it's probably going to depend on the consumer. So we have consumers that are price conscious, environmentally conscious, all sorts of other things that they care about and that they think about. And they may respond differently to those messages, would be my guess.
So with your community that you're selling to.
Yeah, knowing your audience, knowing what they care about, what they're going to respond to. And, you can change your tactic too. Like if telling the story of your 5th generation family doesn't work or becomes less effective, then you could change your message and talk about your environmental stewardship. So I think those are just some things to think about as you think about what story there is to tell about your business, because people do care and they want to support you. And more than ever in COVID, they want to help their neighbor and the people in their community. So show them how they can do that with your language in your marketing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's all been very helpful and interesting. I have the sort of follow up real fast, and then we have 1 or 2 questions for Ben and Steve as well. Do you guys have any information? I know it may be kind of tough, but on if somebody wants to start committing more of their time for their business to social media or digital platforms, if they should go concentrate on their website, on Facebook, on Instagram, is there any information out there on what's most beneficial?
That changes all the time. So what I tell you today may change in 6 months or a year. My advice on that is to pick a platform that you're comfortable with, master it before you add another platform. And the platform that most Americans are on is Facebook. So right now, that's still the place where you can get the most bang for your buck. And people are going to be aware if you're posting the exact same things on all the different platforms. And one of the things that I talk about at Insight Summit is the plethora of other platforms, and I think people just feel overwhelmed. It's too much. So I think if you can be really good at one platform, that's great. But we also talk about a map. So what is your and then? You want them to go to the land that you own, which is your website. So you want to constantly be sending them there, because Facebook changes the algorithm on you constantly. So if we can continue to encourage people to go where we control the message and we control the information, that's where we want them to go. So you need a really good Facebook or a really good website, and you need another good place to go is an e-newsletter, because you can communicate directly with them through that and you can control it. So there's a lot of overwhelm there, but you can just slice in like a knife and just, you don't have to do everything. It's too much. In terms of how much time to spend on it, we do have some data on that. And of course, the bigger companies have full-time people, that sometimes multiple full-time people that are managing that. But we found that even 4 hours a week can be effective for a small business, as long as you have somebody who's dedicated and who's working on that and they're checking it off the list. So that gets into some work management techniques and styles, but yeah, it doesn't have to be an overwhelming amount. It just needs to happen.
Yeah, I think that's great. Even just something like the 4 hours a week, showing people that with a specific amount of time, they could find some improvement. Thanks so much, Dr. Boyer. Steve, if you can hear me, we did have a couple of questions. One question, is a great question, is, are there people on staff at SBDC that are Spanish speaking that can help with some of these relief programs and opportunities?
Absolutely. We have the Office of Minority Business Development, headed by Carolina Ramon. She's phenomenal. I'm joking. She speaks Spanish very. That's her first language. So, and others on the staff as well, depending where you are in the state. I posted her email in the chat. So if you want to contact her directly, and she is the state director of OMBD, statewide director for that program within SBDC, a very busy person. So please keep trying if she doesn't respond right away. But we also have many other Spanish speaking folks in our organization. So she will either get you in the hands of the right person or help yourself or figure out the best way to get to you. So yes, short answer, yes.
Okay, yeah, that's great. And then I had a sort of similar question. If folks don't know if their business is located in a historically underserved area, is there somewhere they can go to easily find that?
Super easy. Google it. Just just type in your address. Am I in a hub zone? Boom, it popped up really quickly. So there's a lot of new market tax credits and all that sort of thing out there that are part of federal programs. Pretty much all you have to do is Google it, and it'll give you a quick answer. If you are having any problems with that, be sure and contact us at SBDC. We've got some other direct links can help as well.
Okay, thank you. And then Ben, we do have a question for you. I know we're going way back in the program. We had a question when you were talking about the uptick in sales from COVID. I don't remember exactly which table it was, but we had a question about why you think Georgia maybe didn't see quite as big of an uptick as some of the other southeastern states.
I think Georgia opened up really fast. Georgia was shut down for 20 days. And you compare other states that are in some of being shut down. So basically we shut down and then we opened up really quickly. And for Louisiana was down for basically until the end of May, and we were open. Georgia shut down March 3rd and opened back up March 23rd. So I think a lot of this has to do with when firms shut down, when people were told to stay home, and how long they were told to stay home. Because if you look at prime time to sell plants, that's right in that window. So those couple extra weeks, I think, made a big difference. If you were forcing people to be at home, they were buying stuff and planting it.
Yeah, great. I think we are like right on our time, Greg.
I'm blown away. What great information. I mean, I hope everyone in all the attendees out there will be interested to see the next presentation. I mean, what a great way to kick this off. And Dr. Boyer and Steve and Dr. Campbell, just what terrific presentations. Jill, would you like to add anything here? I haven't heard from you.
Oh, no, this was fantastic. Thank you all so much for your time. And we'll be making this available online for folks to watch the recording.